after a torrid first quarter. That was a good sign from Ferguson. Harvey now. He might kick his second goal. He's done everything in this quarter, and he's done a bit more now.
Harvey tries to take Simmons on, buys another 20 metres from hard on the boundary. That's a sensational kick. Robert Harvey, excellent work.
Harvey, therefore I declare Robert Harvey of the St Kilda Football Club the winner of the 1997 Brownlow medal.
Well, when discussions are centred around who the greatest St Kilda player of all time is, there are probably 5 names that consistently get a mention and are just about the 5 that should get a mention every time. It is Darryl Baldock, Ian Stewart, Tony Lockett, Nick Riewoldt and Robert Harvey, who is our special guest on the podcast today. 2-time Brownlow medalist, AFL Players Association MVP, 8 All-Australians, 4 St Kilda Best and Fairest, finished in the top 3 on 10 occasions, is in the St Kilda Team of the Century and was a 3-time EJ Whitten medalist for Victoria, 383 games, which is a club record and number 5 in the AFL. Robert, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure, boys. How are we going?
Going very well. Nice to have you with us. I guess as we go back to the start of the journey, and it is, as we know, a fair way back. Your first coach was one of those names we just mentioned that would be in that conversation in Darryl Baldock. It was seen as an exciting time for the club, although 88 had been a bit of a battle. You were 16 years of age. You made your debut late in the season, and as I understand it, it came with a bit of a guarantee, which I imagine would have been good for a young player. I think Darryl Baldock said that you would have your place in the side for that entire last month, regardless of what happened.
Yeah, well, that's a very long time ago now. I was playing well before my time. I wasn't playing well enough to probably hold my position, but Doc did tell me that the season was gone for us anyway. We were last, I think, on the ladder. He just said you'll be playing the last 4 games no matter what. So that was good reassurance for me because, as I said, I wasn't playing well enough. It probably was a reflection of where we were at the time because I started under 19s that year. I played the first 8 games and then played 6 in the reserves and was straight to the seniors. So it was a bit of a whirlwind, to be honest. I was still doing year 11 at John Paul College, so my head was spinning. As I said, I was probably a bit before my time, but I'm glad it all happened. It was a great experience, and I learned a lot from it.
Rob, Nick Splitter here. Thanks for coming on the show, mate. Just a quick question about that time and being at that age. At that stage, did you have visions of being great, or was it literally just trying to get out there and have a kick and run around and get a jumper?
No, quite honestly, my dad, the pre-season before that, going into that season, was dragging me in the car to get me to go to the under-19 training camp. I wouldn't go because I was so happy doing what I was doing at Seaford, and I just played in an under-17 premiership there, pretty much the only one I played in, and I just didn't want to go, and I just didn't think it was a waste of time. So Dad really just dragged me in the car saying, you just got to go. And I just kept making it. I made a cut to the final 80, and then a cut to the final 60, and then a cut to the final 40. But literally, I thought I was just playing out time to go back to play at Seaford. And even they had that old probables v the possibles under 19s game where there's 2 games on, and the more likely ones are playing in the later game, and the unlikely ones in the early game. And I was in the early game, and I managed just to squeak in and play round 1, where I played in the back pocket. I remember playing back pocket against Fitzroy at Moorabbin in my first under 19s game, and as you guys or anyone would know that's seen me play, that's not going to last long for me playing back pocket. So I was on the bench by quarter time, and I definitely thought this was going to be it. This is definitely get your orders, get the arse, get back to Seaford and do your thing. And as fate would have it, I started on the bench next week, and one of our boom recruits, who's a country kid, went down in the second quarter in the midfield, and I got my chance there. And I thought I in a lot of ways didn't look back. It was just the opportunity I needed. It was talk about sliding doors. Anything could happen. I literally could have been back and out of the team in round 2 and never been seen again.
Do you remember who that recruit from the country was?
you know what? I've tried to think about that, and I can't remember his name, but I know his face. I just can't remember his name. And if I had a playing list and that was at Windy Hill, it was round 2 at Windy Hill, I'd probably pick his name, but I just can't. I can't remember it. But it was, it was a sliding door moment for sure.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for joining us, Rob. Now, thinking about similar time, a few people probably do know that you were a little bit of a handy cricketer at that point. Was there much of a danger to that taking over football? And if you had, do you reckon you might have gone far with that or not? Or was it ever?
Yeah. Well, no, I was definitely playing cricket. I loved it. I probably loved it more than, I loved it as much as I did footy. And I thought I was a little bit better at that stage at cricket, but I probably, in the end, I was probably limited. I ended up playing. I was about that time. I ended up playing Victorian under-19s and did all that. Did all those things, and I really loved it. And I remember in the early stages of our my under-19 days, which was pretty brief, and our full forward was none other than Shane Warne, who was at that stage more unfit, and he was our full forward. But I remember clearly talking to him about, because I think I was playing cricket at Oakley and I was about to go play in Fitzroy Doncaster. So I was playing sub-district, about to go play district cricket, and he was already playing at St Kilda. But I remember him telling me he was playing in the fourths and the thirds, and like I said, what do you do? And he said, leg spinner, and I'm playing in the thirds and fourths, but he was more into his footy at that stage, and as it sort of flipped around for us both there, and I remember 2 years later thinking, shit, that's Warne. He's playing Test cricket for Australia, and didn't take long.
That's sliding doors if we ever see it.
A young bloke more into his footy becomes the greatest leg spinner of all time, and a young bloke more into his cricket goes on to win 2 Brownlows at the Saints and play 380 games.
It did. It flipped around. It was interesting. It was a good time.
Now we spoke to Stuart Lowe a little bit about Moorabbin memories, which is quite topical with St Kilda being back there. But your second ever victory at Moorabbin was one of the most famous wins at Moorabbin, the game against Carlton in '89, where Plugger kicks 10, including the winning goal. I guess, can you just encapsulate Moorabbin for you and those memories? You would have played there for 5 years up until we bid farewell to the ground in '92. But when that ground was really pumping, because as you emerged as a player, St Kilda emerged as a team and would obviously be playing finals by the early 90s? Look, and as Lowy would have said last week, it's unforgettable to be able to say you played there. And my career went for a long time, 21 years, but I think my fondest memories are of those days, of the Moorabbin days, and just the atmosphere of that ground was something that and unless you actually were there to experience it, it's hard to describe it. And when Lockett was rampaging and the noise that was made and the stands would shake, it was just it was an experience that you just never forget, and it was a privilege to have been able to be a part of it. Not only that, to see just the terraces full of people, just in their routines. I remember playing the reserves. You get there at 10:30, and people setting up in the same spots, every week with their barbecues and their same, looking at their records out, looking at the young players, and it was just it was an amazing experience. Like it was a phenomenal thing, and something I'll never forget. By extension to that, we spoke about Tony Lockett there. Your record over the course of your career with some of the greatest forwards the club has ever had. So you started your career delivering the ball to Tony Lockett. Stuart Lowe was obviously around the mark, and then Fraser Gehrig, Nick Riewoldt, obviously later on in your career. You could argue, probably throwing the dock in there, that they're 4 of the best 5 forwards St Kilda have ever produced. So as much as they were blessed to have you delivering the footy to them, what was it like breaking out of the middle and always having someone like that leading up at the footy?
Look, and as you said, like when you reel off names like that, like you didn't really have to be perfect with your kicking or your delivery. They do the rest for you, but they're all different in their own ways. And like Plugger, and you throw in Stu Lowe himself. His hands were unbelievable. Like I think I've seen a guy take a contested mark like Stuart Lowe. He was unbelievable marking of the ball, and Plugger obviously in his own way, like just. You just had to get the ball somewhere near him in a one-on-one. if it was slightly to his advantage, he'd mark it every time. Like he was clearly the best player I've ever seen. Like and just the talent that guy had on him, it was a phenomenal player. And obviously Riewoldt, who more of an athlete, just what a great athlete he was, and so courageous as well. But they're all so different, but in their own ways, just so brilliant. And probably at the time you take it for granted because you always had a good forward there. And then now I'm in coaching, and you see how hard it is to find A-grade forwards in your team. We're just always so blessed to have those forwards in our team, and I think it's sort of something that the fans could always connect with, having that forward in the team, and like they just loved it, and we loved it. It was even when Lockett went, I think everyone thought the joint would fall down, but life went on, and we found Riewoldt and Gehrig and Stu Lowe stepped up, and it was just a great time.
Just on that, there's a bit of footage doing the rounds on social media this week because of Fraser Gehrig's birthday against North Melbourne. I think it was 03, 04-ish. Clip of you streaming down the middle with about 20 seconds to go, 30 seconds to go, and delivering it long to Fraser Gehrig in the goal square for the winning goal. Do you remember that game? Do you remember what was going through your mind in that moment? Did you see him there kind of on his own thinking, we've got this?
No. Well, I vaguely remember the game, but I'm not I'm hopeless with social media, as anyone would know. But all the Collingwood players, during yesterday, had seen it, and they were asking me about it. And they were embellishing it a bit. Like Taylor Adams was saying, I was steaming through the middle. What do you say? I was like streaming through the middle. I said, now I know you full shit. I was about 34 at the time, but I was in space. I know I was in a lot of space, and I reckon the ball, I don't know how long it was in the last minute of the game, I would have thought, and we were a couple of points down. But it's just back then the game was so open. Even then, it was literally went from deep in our defence all the way and to Fraser within 10 seconds. I reckon it was really quick. And I just remember seeing him. He used to love those angle leads, so it was more of a one where he was on one side of the field rather than coming straight up, and he was leading back sort of diagonally towards goal. So it was all you had to do was just put it in that big hole of space. He was always going to run onto it, and he was only 15 out. So, it was a good memory, and he was a ripper player, Fraser, and he only lives around the corner from me now, so I see him a little bit still, and what a great man.
Now, we've seen the return of State of Origin in sorts just recently, which you were involved with a little bit yourself. But going back to when you were playing there and lining up in the Big V, and just how much did it mean back then, especially being able to also line up alongside teammates like Plugger and Lowy and Berkey and them, and just obviously we don't really have that anymore, but how big was it back in the day?
Oh, it was pretty big. One of my first games, I remember getting on the plane. I think I was 19 or 20, I reckon, and I was sitting in between Timmy Watson and Simon Madden, and I was a mad Essendon supporter as a kid, so I just remember just pinching myself, thinking, how good is this? And all the way to South Australia, I was just telling them how much stories about me going to Windy Hill and watching those two play. So, I'll never forget it. And it was just the whole experience back then with EJ and Bobby Skilton, and then later days Dipper and Jared Healy. They had a real passion for it. So they drove those officials and those guys who run the program. They just loved it. So they drove it so hard, and the players really bought into it. And obviously, once the interstate teams come in, it drifted a bit. But it was a pretty good experience. And I remember I was telling a few of because I coached the assistant coach to the Lockett the game last week. And I was telling a few of the players just about how it used to unfold. I used to play Saturday at Moorabbin, and we'd go to the disco, and it'd be a big night Saturday night. Recovery Sunday. Sunday was was pretty loose at the club, and then Monday we used to get. I was saying to the players, we used to get flogged a bit on the Mondays at training. So we'd often train for a couple of hours on Monday night, which players never do now. So you'd train on Monday night, and then you'd fly out to South Australia on the Tuesday, play State of Origin Tuesday night, and anyone who's on those trips would know there was a big after game celebration. EJ and Bobby and the boys who run that program, you'd back at the hotel, be drinking, and before you knew it, it was Wednesday morning, and you'd be going back to get on the plane straight to the airport, and then you'd fly back to Melbourne, straight to Moorabbin, train again on the Wednesday, and then play again on the Saturday. It was just it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. Play 3 games in a week, just like a carnival sort of atmosphere. It was really good.
Your memories of those Brownlow years, 97 and 98, contrasting years for you and where the club was at. Obviously, 97, you won a Brownlow. We know the circumstances around Chris Grant, but St Kilda was 5 days away from playing in a historic grand final. Then the following year, you won the Brownlow easily with a record number of votes, but Stan Elves, I think, had been sacked on the same day, and we'd had a relatively disappointing end to that season. So brilliant times for you personally, but I imagine the weeks themselves couldn't possibly have been more different.
No, well, when I think back to those times, I think my overriding emotion on those 2 years is sort of what went wrong. Like, I just remember that first Brownlow, like that night, thinking, we're playing the grand final, or your mind, because I went there with Spider Everett in the car straight from training, like on Monday night, and thinking, how good's this? We're playing the grand final. And then the Brownlow sort of happened, but we were straight back on, just with our focus on the game, and it was just such a great time. And then, obviously, the whirlwind of the 98 and what happened with Stan Elves, and when I think back now, like all those years ago, I just think, what happened? Like, what we were just so good there for that period, and I still sort of try and get my head around how that sort of unravelled as it did in that time, because it was a really, it had so much promise and so much hope, and I think even the grand final itself, to be up at half time and not play our best in the second half just was so disappointing. So my overriding emotion is just almost like trying to, what did happen? Like, it was just, I don't understand how that sort of totally, within 2 years after that 98 season, we're on the bottom of the ladder again. It was just so weird in that experience. So I look back on it really with mixed emotions, because obviously it was a great time, and I was probably in the peak of my career physically and as a player. But I just can't work out what happened with our team.
Now, you did mention you Spider Everett there. We've had him on a previous episode. Now, he mentioned something about you being a bit of a blackjack player. So he told us that pretty much you'd chuck your money out there and then let them play. Much truth to that story, or? Well,
I'd love to know what else he said, because he, in what context he said it. Because we used to, it was usually late at night, and I imagine that's what he's getting at. So, but I hardly ever played. But I just know they used to have. We used to play blackjack together, and he used to. He carries on. But I'll let him tell all those stories, because he's. I can't really remember too much about it.
It was about 6 months ago, I think you told us, and I'm pretty sure there are a couple of Jim Beam and Cokes involved, and that sort of thing in the background. Halves, obviously at the top of this segment, Parko ran off a list of accolades and honours that you picked up throughout your career. On top of that, I think Mike Sheahan named you in his 50 all-time greatest players of the AFL in about 2008, 2009. Is there something that sticks out, either in terms of an achievement, an accolade, or just a moment in your career that kind of sticks out as your number one moment?
Probably not a moment, like not one thing. Probably it's more, as you get older, like, and as I said, I'm still involved in footy, so I'm still around young guys all the time. It's probably more just, or you just see teammates. Like, I think the thing that probably frustrates me the most is constantly having to feel like I'm defending, the club or our era, our period or something. We had some really, really good people at the club. Then there still is now. I played with some really good people as players, not just players, but as people, and it probably really hit home to me in Spud's stuff last year with all the Spuds. Circumstances it makes you reflect, and the real close guys you play with makes you even closer. And it just makes you think, you reflect so much on what good times we did have. Like, most of those are off the field, but we get together more now than we ever did, because it's so important to us. And there's nothing, because we didn't play in that premiership or we just didn't quite get there. It doesn't mean that was all to waste. It was a really good place to be. Don't take anything back, or don't regret anything, and so I'm really proud of the people and the club that it was. So it's probably more of an overall thing than anything, than just and for whatever reason with St Kilda, there's just that emotion attached to it that's always been there, and that's something that goes back to Moorabbin, Waverley, Etihad. It's something that's always there with the club, and it's something that it was a privilege to be a part of. So I'm really, really proud and happy that I do that. And you had Stu Lowe on the show last week. He would say the same. He's one of my best mates. He'd say the same thing. It's just a great place, and I really I feel privileged to have played there.
And even from the relative outside position as spectators, we do know what you mean when you say there is sort of something there. It is a hard one to explain. And I guess on that note, well done. We said that to Stewie as well. Well done to you and to he and everybody else, at the funeral, but also at the best and fairest last year for your comments. Last one from me, which is I guess a two-parter. When asked about the best game you played, the one that comes up most frequently is probably the qualifying final against Adelaide. Again, it's probably one that you look back on maybe as a missed opportunity given what happened in the prelim. But is that perhaps the standout game that you remember most that you've played? And I guess the second part from me is there's only 4 people that have played more games than you, and they played most of their career relatively injury-free. That wasn't necessarily the case for you. Knee recos, shoulder recos, soft tissues, broken ankle, all that sort of stuff. We know your preparation was meticulous, but what do you put your longevity down to, I guess, as the second part of that, as to how you were able to survive in the game for so long?
A lot of luck, I think. And you reel off those injuries and all the stuff. I think a lot of it is just is a lot. It is a lot of luck. Like, a lot of guys I played with were far more better prepared than I was. Like, I trained hard, definitely, but I wouldn't say, I overly looked after myself too well. I wasn't great with a lot of stuff, and that's just the way I was. But I definitely trained really hard, and maybe that's why I did break down a bit. In the fact, I didn't. Like, I look at a guy like Scotty Penderbury, who I coach now, and he prepares so much better than I did. So. No, I think a lot of luck. A lot of it is drive and desire. Like, I just was so driven to play. I just always felt like we were just around the corner from that premiership, and even 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, even 2008 when I finished, played in the prelim. Like, we were just so close all through those years, and I don't know. I was just thinking maybe one more just to give us, get me over the line to the. Like, I just felt like it was an inch away all the time, and that's probably what drove me the most to keep playing on. In the end, I look back now, I probably might have played too long, but I just felt like, it'd drive you just to do that extra bit, or just, that extra session, or the fire just didn't go out because I didn't. Maybe if I had won a flag in 2005 or whatever it was, it might have, but yeah, because it was still. I was still chasing the dream. It was, I was so hungry all the time. That's probably what made me play for so long.
Harves, when you retired in 2008, it seemed like you moved almost seamlessly from a playing career into coaching and being an assistant coach at Carlton. The senior coach at Carlton at the time was none other than Brett Ratten. What was it like working under Rats, and what should Saints fans expect from a Ratten-led team?
Yeah, no, it was a really good experience for me. And the thing is with my transition, in 2007 and 8, I had a really good relationship with Ross Lyon, who was coaching St Kilda at the time. So I said to him all along, whenever you want me to finish, just tap me on the shoulder and, I'm done. I was sort of always in close conversation with him, not only about me, but about the team, and because he was only just starting out himself. So we had a really, a close note. That probably sparked me a little bit into the coaching side of it, because I was just really I hadn't experienced a coach like him before. For whatever reason, I don't know, it just resonated with me. And then going to Carlton, getting away from St Kilda, somewhere you've just known all your life, just to get somewhere different like Carlton was great. And yeah, Rats was super. He was so good, such a relaxed, loves a laugh, loves flair and attack and excitement. And that's what I think what St Kilda fans could expect with him. And overall, he's just a really good person, and I really enjoyed my time. I only had 2 years there, but really enjoyed that time with him. And to be honest, he was probably a bit stiff in the first time round with Carlton, so it's great he's got a second chance, and hopefully he does really well at the Saints.
And just to finish off, basically, there's been a story that's gone around for years and years now. You came out with a plantar fascia injury. And we've heard the stories of jumping off a chair to jumping off the table to jumping off the top of the fridge to try and get this injury sorted. Do you want to put to bed exactly how high you were jumping from and what you were doing and anything? Just basically a little rundown for anyone who doesn't know the story behind it.
Yeah, well, I tend not to get through any speaking or quick Q&As without getting asked about it. I get podiatry students going through uni ringing me up saying, I'm doing this thesis on plantar fascia, and I heard you did this thing, and so it's something that never quite tends to leave me, this one. But at the time, it just felt like common sense, to be honest. I think Fraser had it and Cozzy had it at the time, and they both didn't get better until they snapped it through, which took them a couple of months, I think, of playing footy, and because it would just tear gradually, and then every week it'd tear a little bit, till eventually it would snap. And then for whatever reason, once you snapped it, it was fine. So it was almost like you didn't need it. And it was weird, and I only just started getting it, so I just said to the physio, well, if those two boys went through all that pain. And I was thinking, I was 33 or something at the time, so I was thinking I was probably going to be in my last year, and I just didn't want to experience that in my last year. So I said to him, when I come tomorrow, it's going to be done. And he sort of laughed at me. I just made sure all the family was out, all the kids were out, and Danielle was out, and I just went out in the backyard, and I think we had a backyard sort of furniture table that was probably a bit bigger than a normal kitchen table, probably, I don't know how high, but high enough. So just jumped off that about 20 times, I reckon. And your natural instinct is to protect it. So it took me a while just to have the balls to let it go. And once I let it go, it just snapped completely, and it bruised up. And I was rolling around the backyard, like a little squeal, and squeal on the way. A bruise came straight up, black, and I was brand new, and I turned up at the club the next day, and sure enough, showed the physio, and it said, told you, and it was done, and that was it. I did get some calls for a while, from other clubs, people from other clubs who have had it, because it's such a frustrating injury. It's like someone's driving a nail on your foot, and I had a guy, one particular guy from interstate, who rang me and said, he's been battling this for ages, and I suggested what he do, but he took it a bit far. He jumped off a fence, fixed his plantar fascia, broke his ankle. I think he's out for 12 months. So he took it a bit far, but it was one of those things that you just, I don't know, footy does funny things to you sometimes, and I was pretty desperate to fix it up.
there are a lot of reasons why you're a club great, and that's not a bad way to finish, I think, in terms of that level of commitment. Harves, thank you very much for giving us some of your time. Good luck with the Magpies and everything that you're doing in a coaching sense as well. And, thank you for your contribution to the club over such a long period of time.
Thanks for having me on, boys. Appreciate it.